All right, we're live here at the Hayek Business Review Talks, and I'm here with Jim Tiberia. Before we start, we're just going to go through the countdown right now.
Ladies and gentlemen, may I have your attention, please? This is a global transmission. Hayek will be live in 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Enjoy the show.
All right, and we're here with Jim Tiberia, ready to start now. Jim Tiberia is the founder of SBT Industries, a top executive search firm based in Phoenix, Arizona, and is specialized in recruiting professionals for the semiconductor industry nationwide since 1989. And Jim has also written an article for Hayek Business Review called The Role of the Recruiting Function. Welcome, Jim, to our conversation today.
Thank you, Edson. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you, too. So would you please tell us a little bit more about what you do so we can understand?
Sure. SBT is an executive search firm specializing in the semiconductor industry, as you mentioned, and we partner with very select firms that need our help to find a very unique individual that they can't find themselves. And most times it'll be coming from a competitor. So as opposed to them poaching their competitors and getting into certain legal issues, they count on us to do our job and recruit, source, and qualify the very best individuals for a very unique role within their organization.
So we're talking here about the roles that are for executives, and this would be what for this? Does this count also manager position, or is this directors and CEOs?
Thanks for saying that. They call it executive search firm, but we do engineers all the way up to CEOs. So it sounds better and a little more classy than an engineering search firm. So
you also do engineers, and engineers with a very specialized knowledge, I guess.
Yes, sir.
And that has been nowadays very. It's been I've heard stories where ChatGPT, for example, OpenAI has been recruiting top engineers from elsewhere, or Meta recruiting engineers from OpenAI, and it's also been in high demand to recruit the top talent of the technical aspect and not just the executives, right? Is this changing nowadays?
Oh, yeah, sure. AI and LinkedIn and various platforms, they can help create a pool of people, right? They can narrow down through the thousands and thousands, and they can do a lot of the legwork on the technical search part of this just by keywords, et cetera. But AI, unless you're a robot recruiting a robot, you need a human being to find out, is this person really a good fit? Especially, again, the best of the best are not looking and have to be recruited away. So it's an art form. Again, all the high-tech gadgets out there are great in some respects, and for a lot of volume recruiting, perhaps to save people time to narrow down the field. But you still have to speak with somebody. You still have to learn what's important for them if they were to make a change, and whether they're actively looking or not. Our model is going after folks that are not looking, because the people that are looking, the companies already have access to those people. So the problem with that is companies that are competing with other companies, if you've got an actively, a candidate's actively looking, how many situations are they going after at the same time? And is your one opportunity going to be better than all the other ones they're looking at? So the model that I was taught back in 1984 was to recruit those that were not looking. Why? Because if they were to make a change, they're making it for the right reason. They're making it because they want this opportunity, not because they have to make a change, which is something I advise people early in their careers, something professors will never teach someone early in their career development, is how and when to make a change. One of the most common misconceptions is you should only look when you have to look, and that's wrong. Or wait till you get laid off, or wait till your boss is has moved on, and now you have a new boss, and you're not crazy about that boss. So what we found over the years, and it really works, is to deal with somebody and educate them on you have nothing to lose by exploring an opportunity that could be career beneficial. Because if you investigate it and decide it's not better than what you have, fine. There's nothing lost. You still go to work every day where you're going, and everything's fine. Again, you would only change if something's better. And it's a night and day difference from having to deal with people that, that are laid off or have to make a change for whatever reason. That's not a good position to be in, because we've seen thousands and thousands of times people make bad decisions because they have to find a job, because of a layoff or something bad that happened. So we always encourage people to always have an open mind, whether they've been in whatever industry they're in, 3 years, 5 years, etc. Always take that recruiter's call, because you never know, it could be the best thing that ever happened to him or her.
That's a great insight, because you often think that the person looking for a job is the ones that are available in the job market, but your role is specifically to go after the people who are in a role already and might not be looking to change his career. And you said that it's a good idea to consider changing your roles, even if you're already well placed in your current role. But wouldn't you say that if you change too much your job, if you're changing companies or your jobs, you will seem like you're not as loyal to your employer, and that might hurt your resume? How would you see that?
Absolutely. There's a fine line on, too many job changes is going to hurt you. So what I'm talking about is, let's talk about somebody new in their career, first job out of college. You don't want to change after a year. You want to give it at least a good 3 years minimum to set a foundation, to show loyalty, to show, you're not a job hopper. But after that 3 to 5 years, after your first role, definitely have an open mind. Doesn't mean you have to actively pursue things, especially if you're happy, but always be open-minded. Because if you're not, and trust me when I say this, that there's a lot of people I've spoken to earlier in their career, the first thing they say right off the bat when a recruiter calls, or when we call them, is, I'm happy where I'm at, and they get all nervous and they want to hang up the phone. And they like saying that too when their boss is standing by, or their coworkers, that I just hung up on a recruiter, right? So it's something where if you don't have an open mind, next thing you know, life goes like this, and 5 years, next thing you know, 10 years, and you're still at the same job you had out of school because you shut down the outside world. How many opportunities have you passed up by not having an open mind? Right. So I'm not advocating job hopping. And even if you do make a change after 5 years, give it a couple years. You never want to just keep jumping. So it's the opposite of what I said earlier. Having an open mind, then there's a risk of too much, right? So
you said one
question.
Yeah, it does actually. You said, because there's a fine line there between, and it's not much of a science as it is an art, right? So it would depend on case by case basis. But what would you say is a good rule of thumb after, let's say, a mid-level career? How often you should change your job?
I would say, the 3 to 5 years is good, with 5 being probably better. I mean, if you start off with 5 years at one company and 5 at another, I think that's a nice number. I wouldn't go less than 3. If you start making job changes every 2 years or so, then it's going to be suspect. And I see that a lot in marketing people, more so than in sales and marketing people, more so than the engineering world. So would you avoid taking a look at curriculums which have less than 2 years in their of change from job to job? Curriculums meaning,
like if you're considering a candidate and you see
Yeah.
that they're changing jobs less than 3 years, let's say, uh, would you consider that is not good and in
Right.
their selection process?
During the search process, when we're looking at, the pool of candidates that we're going to spend a good hour qualifying, time is money, right? We're screening the resume first, and if we see too many job changes, we won't call them. So again, there's that fine line of, change is good, but too much change is not good. So I hope that answers that question.
Yes, it does. And another question, just to understand a little bit of the context in which you work, you said you do executive search specifically for the semiconductor industry. And I'm just curious, why is it so specific to the semiconductor industry and not, let's say, IT, for example, or hardware industry?
Sure.
And the second is, what is exactly the semiconductor industry, if we could explain that too?
First, to answer the first question, why semiconductors? Because vanity has a lot to do with my whole career and the thousands of lives that have been changed. Why vanity? Because I asked someone where he got his haircut at a restaurant. After moving from Buffalo to New York to Phoenix, going to Arizona State, this gentleman looked very, very sharp. And I said, I have to ask this guy where he got his haircut. He just so happened to be the president of a search firm in the semiconductor industry. And after I graduated from Arizona State, he's walking into the salon. I'm walking out, and I said, "You remember me?" And he said, "Yes." Whether he did or not, I don't know. And I said, "Are you hiring?" It was a bad economy in 1984, mind you, so I was grateful for any interview. And I said, "Are you interviewing?" He said, "Yeah, come on in tomorrow." And I got the job, and that was July 16th of 1984, recruiting semiconductor engineers. It wasn't the plan I had for my life. So another lesson for the young people out there. You never know who you're going to meet. Don't be shy, because that's how we got into semiconductors. And this was before personal computers, before fax machines, which, by the way, I think is one of the greatest inventions ever known to man, because we used to recruit an engineer, handwrite their resume, mail it to a company, and wait 5 days for a response. So when the fax machine came out, it was a glorious day, because we could instantly get Edson's resume just like that, right? And then turn around and fax it to the company. So I learned the nuts and bolts of the semiconductor industry, even with a business degree, recruiting the most highly technical people in the world. Semiconductors are the integrated circuits that fit on the tip of your fingertip with millions of transistors.
It's the chips, right?
The chips, yeah, that go in your smartphones, go into appliances, go into aircraft, millions of applications. Anything high tech in this world has a chip in it. So it was good. It was good strategy to meet a guy who was in the semiconductor industry, because 41 years later, I'm still doing it and still love it. And technology just keeps evolving. It's the most fascinating thing I've ever seen. They used to have 2-inch wafers, so like this. So you can only put so many integrated circuits on that wafer, and now they're 12-inch wafers. And wafer fabs used to cost $500,000, and now they're billions of dollars, which is why you have only a handful of companies that actually manufacture their own integrated circuits. They're called foundries, so they make the chips for everybody out there. So
that's one of those companies. Intel, NVIDIA.
Intel has their own fabs. TSMC is the largest one in the world. They make integrated circuits for hundreds of companies, because nobody can afford to have their own manufacturing plant, right? So
you're not an engineer yourself.
Correct.
And how does that affect the way that you recruit people? Does it give you a different perspective on recruiting for a career that you're not necessarily the expert in?
Through a lot of hard work, you learn the industry, you learn the technology, but our skill set isn't technical. It's how to deal with a human being, which again answers your question about AI and other things. Can't replace. When we're recruiting somebody, especially those that aren't looking, basic questions. Edson, what would it take for you to look outside of Hayek? I know you're happy. What kind of a situation would it take? Let's talk about that. And we're recruiting for specific roles. If your answers don't align with the role we're recruiting for, use title, for example. If you're recruiting a senior design engineer, and the only thing he or she will look at is a design engineering management role, that knocks that individual out of consideration for the individual contributor role I may be recruiting him or her for, correct? So we're looking for what would it really take for this individual to make a change. And then the screening process continues if that lines up. Let's talk about what kind of a company would this individual need to see or be part of to make a change. And you have a variety of companies. You've got the companies the size of Apple and Texas Instruments. And then you've got mid-sized companies, maybe 500 to 1,000 employees. And then especially with AI today, you've got a score of startup companies. So there's some individuals that would only make a change for a similar established company if they're at a big company right now. Some don't like the bureaucracy of a big company and will only really want a mid-size, or some will take a shot and say, you know what, I want to go for the startup world. So that has to line up. Their salary expectations have to line up with the role we're recruiting them for. If we're talking about relocation, there's scores of things that come into consideration of whether or not we'll represent this individual. We can ask questions that the HR community cannot ask. We're not hiring the individual, right? If I'm recruiting Edson, I can say, hey, Edson, are you married? How many children do you have? How old are your kids? Companies can't ask that, right? We can, because I want to know if I'm wasting my time, because try to move a high school student who's captain of the volleyball team or the cheerleading squad or the star football player, and you get to that 15 to 18-year-old mark, and it's a very difficult proposition to try to move a family with kids in that age.
Right.
Let alone, people with, special disability situations, kids with autism. As you see, autism has gone through the roof, and, they may be very comfortable with, their doctors, their teachers, et cetera. So we can ask all these things before we decide if we're going to represent this individual.
And how do you spot talent? What are the main characteristics you look for to see that is a talented person I should go after?
The resume is one thing, right? It shows you where have you been, what have you done. But until you speak with somebody and until you ask questions that you get to know people, it's really, again, to your question about a business degree recruiting high-tech people, it's conversation. It's trust. Does this person trust you enough to have an open conversation about their dreams, their goals, their life? And just in the middle of this conversation, you can tell how sharp somebody is or not. Their accomplishments are on the resume. Anybody can read that. But again, it's the art of a recruiter, a good one, to dig down deep and is this somebody basically I want to not waste my time, spend my time with, right?
Right.
Because we represent somebody from A to Z. Not only do we send their resume, but we're working with them throughout the entire process. We're coaching them on how to conduct a phone interview, how to prep for an actual on-site interview. You don't need an engineering degree to help people through, maneuver through that process. I coined a really stupid phrase a long time ago: learn and earn. So I'll tell an engineer, again, who's not looking, but then they get a little excited once we describe our client's opportunity. And then once we represent them, and if there's interest in from the company side, now the fun starts. Again, now we're starting to prep them. And I tell people, learn and earn. Learn everything you can. And each step of this process, earn the right to get to the next level. If you don't earn the right to get to that next level, all bets are off and you go back to your day job, right? And that's good advice for anybody, again, whether they're actively looking or not, in the interview process itself. Ask good questions, learn, sell yourself, show excitement. A lot of times, believe it or not, too, another tip for the youngsters out there, there's a lot of times companies will not hire somebody, and you know why? They didn't think the individual was interested. They're playing poker. Well, I don't want to show too much excitement because it might hurt my offer if they think I'm desperate. And guess what? Too many times I can say the company has said, yeah, Jim, this individual's, very, very technical, very good. You want to make them an offer? No. Why is that? He or she didn't seem too interested, so we're going to move on to the next candidate. I mean, look, all these little, intricacies of the interview process. That's where we help the individuals, and we're also helping companies. Why would a company pay us thousands of dollars for an engineer or a manager or director or VP? Why? Because we save them time. They don't have to go through thousands of resumes. They don't have to, they get 20 resumes and they're going to, what manager has time to spend an hour screening an individual, 20 times over? So when we get a search, we only send our goal, and we sell this to our client companies and to new clients, is we're going to send you 3 to 5 resumes that have been screened and vetted. And that's a huge advantage for the companies. Executives everybody's busy for that matter, right? But we're saving them time. Time is money.
Right.
And then when it comes down to the offer process, one last thing on that, without an executive recruiter, at least SBT, if you're going to make an offer to somebody without a third party like us, what's the right offer to make? You're throwing a dart and hoping and praying that offer is going to be accepted, right?
Right.
We are dealing with, again, both sides, and it's an art of negotiation then that comes into play. I want to do the best for the individual, but I also want to do the best for the company that's paying us. So we're like a dual agent. That's an art all in and of itself. That's another podcast down the road.
That's a great point, because it's often hard to know the price, right? Because if you think about the economics of it, when you're thinking about prices in the market, you go to the supermarket, you know what the prices for the meat, the prices for anything you're buying there. But when it's a service, and especially in jobs, the prices are not really well defined, and it might be hard to understand exactly what price you should sell yourself or what price you should offer someone for their talents, right? So you would have more information in that from both sides, and also from similar positions that went into that certain career, right?
And it's the other thing is, our client companies, we've advised them, you will not be making an offer to this individual until we have this individual closed, meaning he or she is given their word that if this offer contains X, Y, and Z, we've got a deal, right? Maybe a little more than the company wanted to make, but when I give them the commitment, if we come up at this package, starting with the base and the other perks, you've got our word. Again, that's saving time, because companies without that service, again, throwing darts, hoping and praying, giving a week to make a decision. Person says no, now they're back to square one, right? So another advantage of using an executive recruiter, a good one anyway. And then the fun starts. Also, part of the screening process is, do I trust this individual will stay with their decision, keep their word? Because guess what? Companies don't want to lose their best engineer. So guess what happens then? Oh, Edson, exactly. Edson, come on in. Before you make your final decision, we need to talk. We didn't know you were leaving. We didn't know you were unhappy. Come on, wait, don't do anything. 41 years of stories on what happens behind closed doors when somebody resigns. So my advice to all those out there making a job change in the future, if you accept an offer, stick with it. Don't go back on your word. It'll come back and haunt you. And also, more money isn't going to necessarily change the reasons why you were open to making the change in the first place, right? And the raise that they gave you, chances are a year from now when the review comes, they say, oh, we gave you a raise back then. It's a bad situation. Stick with your decision. Be a man or woman of your word. And you can always go back to the other company that you're leaving, but you don't screw a new company.
Those are great tips. And I can also think of another advantage of changing jobs every once in a while is that you're going to get more experience from different employers, different teams, and that's going to add to your skill set. Right? Maybe there's a certain way of doing things in a certain company, which is different in another company, and you can connect the dots and become a better professional with the process. Right?
Absolutely. One of the requirements we get for the higher level jobs that we recruit for is minimum of 2 company experience. If you only stayed at one company for 10 or 15 years, all you know is that environment, that culture, and as you mentioned, working with the same people. And it can be like 1 year multiplied times 10 of experience versus moving on to another firm, learning how to deal with additional people, learning new challenges. And that's honestly a requirement for the higher level roles as you progress in your career, because you've adapted, you've seen how to conquer challenges in 2 different settings minimum. So another little tip for the youngsters out there.
Right. And Jim, for the employer hiring, and this is also a curiosity of mine because I'm often doing interviewing process with the new hires, and we're often there's the common wisdoms of the HR that you should look for how excited the person is, as you mentioned. You should look for past behavior and understand if that person was creating conflict in their jobs, or and you usually want to ask questions that are based on past performance, not necessarily what they think. They get out of the scripted questions, right?
Right.
And that's how I would understand a good interview would be conducted. But I was curious to what's your take on that, and if you would have like certain ways of conducting an interview which would be more interesting to screen talent as an employer and interviewer.
One of my favorite things to ask is, what do you like to do for fun? I mean, it's going to show you a lot about the individual, right?
In which way? How can I understand how person would be a good employee if I ask them what they do for fun?
When you're not at work, what do you like to do? What makes you happy? When you were a kid, what was your dream? But the hobby thing is a real big one too, because short of one guy that I asked that question to in San Diego, who looked up in the sky and 2 minutes later said tennis with a question mark. Short of that, most people will share what they like to do for fun, right? And I think that's something that should be looked into on every interview, right?
Well, what difference does that make, though?
What's that?
What difference does it make, though, if I like tennis versus, I don't know, surfing or gardening?
Well, sometimes, like I play bass guitar, for example. When I'm interviewing somebody, if they have any musical experience or passion, that it puts them at ease, because you can talk about something, familiar, and you might also learn some things that you're glad you learned. I won't get into details, but it can help make the individual feel comfortable to share more, because what you really want in an interview is transparency, right? Again, the resume just shows where somebody's been and what they've done, but you're hiring an individual, and the more, before you live with this individual 8 hours a day, right? The more you know, the better. So sometimes I even ask, we ask about where they're from and if they've moved, and what were the advantages of that, and what were the pros and cons of each area, and basically looking for cultural things that may or may not work with your particular organization.
That's interesting. So you want to get as much as you can off the script and understand what that individual is like, to see if he has a cultural fit with where he's going to.
Yeah, and also too, if they wanted to be a pilot and they gave up, why did they give up? Why didn't they pursue that dream? So it's just little the beyond the resume scene.
And if you're being asked those questions as an interviewee, what are your tips?
Be honest.
As transparent as you can. Right?
I like to cook, and I like to travel, and I like to play bass guitar. What do you like to do, Edson?
Yeah, I like to play tennis. I like to do chess.
So it can help. It can help build rapport with the individual, because again, another thing that companies have told me, when it comes down to the decision to make this individual an offer or not, there's 2 questions they ask in the round table. First one is, can this person do the job? Right? And the second one is, guess what? Do we want to work with this individual 8 hours a day? And believe it or not, personality can sometimes be more important than the technical in our field anyway, but in any industry. Do you want to work with this individual, let alone pay him? Right?
Yeah. Sometimes you spend more time with your coworkers than you do with your spouse.
It's
So
true.
you better have a good relationship with that person.
Yeah.
And if you would think now of the young people watching us and they want to get ready for their professional careers, and also if you could think of yourself when you were at that age, what tips can you give, and what things did you learn the hard way that you would advise someone about?
First thing I would do is, if possible, follow your passion, because once you get in the workforce, again, time goes fast, and next thing you know, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years go by in a blink of an eye. So, if possible, try to get into a field in an industry that you really love. My experience was, I knew I wanted to work with people. I knew I wanted to be in sales of some degree. I did not expect to be recruiting semiconductor engineers. It wasn't in the game plan, but I knew I was going to be sales. And what I've ended up learning was, I'm in sales in one way because we're selling the concept of being open-minded to making a change, right? Because they do not teach that, again, in college. No offense to universities. When is the right time to make a change? So selling the concept of learning and earning, right? I've had so many people that were recruiting for various cities. Oh, I don't want to go to New Jersey. I had a guy wanted to cancel his interview before getting on a plane, and I don't want to move to New Jersey from Phoenix. And the simple question is, you ever been to New Jersey? No. Well, then how do you know? I said, do you like the color of the shoes I'm wearing? And the guy laughed. I said, well, they're blue, in case you wondered. I had a blue suit on, and I had these really cool blue shoes. And he laughed. I got him on a plane, and a month later, he and his family moved to New Jersey. We recruit for very, unique locations. We recruited for Pocatello, Idaho, a little town, this big. Who wants to go there? But getting somebody to have an open mind and say, go look, go learn. You never know. Another advice to the kids out there: don't shut down an opportunity based on a preconceived notion of a particular city or an area. Go see it for yourself. The best opportunity may not be in your backyard. Chances are it won't be in your backyard. So,
something I can think of.
We have eyes for a reason. Go see, go learn, go check it out. Don't listen to anybody. Oh, why are you going to move to, Austin, Texas? Or why are you going to move here? Go look for yourself. Make a decision. Again, earn the right to get the opportunity. Then you have a decision based on facts. Right?
Great point. One thing I can relate to, when I was right out of college, I was avoiding jobs that had to do with auditing, because I just thought I don't like auditing. I don't want to look at that. Later on, a couple of years later, I was now working at the family business and hiring auditors and seeing how talented they were and understanding the whole aspect of the business, because they were looking at it from a different perspective and investigating things inside the business. And I thought, wow, it would be so cool if I had that auditing experience back at the time. So I can totally relate to that sometimes you shut down certain opportunities because you just simply don't know much about it, and you could investigate more and understand it might be a good opportunity after.
Yeah. And something too, that one of the biggest reasons why people don't make a change, you know what it is?
Why?
Fear of change. It's human nature. Whether it's buying a car, I just went through myself buying a car 2 weeks ago. The man who spends his lifetime, advocating change. I didn't want to give up my old car for the new one, and I was petrified. Like, what am I doing? I have this great car. Fear of change is a very dangerous, powerful concept. It really is. So that's something I would advise, anyone, young or old. Don't be afraid. Change is inevitable. It's the only thing that's constant in our lives, right? So, but when it comes to changing jobs, it's terrifying. It really is. Whether it's a move across the street or let alone a relocation. So that's something that we really spend a lot of time with individuals, is counseling them on. It's okay, you're going to be all right, and we tell them to, use their gut after they interview. And again, this is, non-industry specific. When you walk out of an interview, how do you feel? What's your gut telling you? Because there's never going to be a better time to make that decision coming out. It should be a yes or a no. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, be decisive.
But it's funny because the people that say yes, then again, as the process gets the offer negotiation and all that, and then the reality of, oh my God, they get scared. And again, it just comes down to fear of change. So
and
realizing you're better off.
And the feeling that you have, it's okay to embrace uncertainty sometimes. You're never going to know how life is going to be, or what your career is going to be like in a different role. And maybe that fear of change is just understanding that life is uncertain after all.
Yeah. I ask people this, I say, you're 30 years old. Do you still hang around with the same, kids you hung around with when you were 5? And 9 out of 10 people will say no, except my wife. She still has friends from, she has scores of friends. So yeah, I knew, Jay from 5th grade, and Charlie from 7th, not 5th grade, 5 years old, 7. Oh, he was my 2nd grade boyfriend. So short of my wife, most people move on and, and don't have those connections from way back when. So change is inevitable.
Jim, we had a great conversation so far. And is there anything that you wanted to share that I didn't ask about?
You did a great job, Edson. Between my rambling and your great questions, I think we covered a lot. Trying to think. No, I'm good. I hope this helps those that, realize that, it's okay to be open to a recruiter when they call. Treat them with respect. And if it's a good recruiter, they may change your life. And I've been fortunate enough with my great staff all through the years to have a little part in thousands of people's lives. It's very rewarding. So those that are also interested in becoming an executive recruiter, firsthand, I can say it's been great. Again, 41 years have gone pretty fast. And I still love it. I still love the challenge. And it's very rewarding to help companies get the individual that they really, really want. And in the meantime, helping an individual with their career development. So it's been a blast. And I really appreciate the chance to speak with you, Edson. Fantastic.
I appreciate you taking the time to speak with us too. And if people want to get in touch with you, Jim, what is the best way?
Email is fine, jimt@sbtindustries.com. Industries is plural.
Fantastic. Well, thank you very much for the conversation today. And I look forward to hearing more about you.
I enjoyed it, Edson. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.